Hi, I'm Kamali, taking you through some of the things people are talking about and some of the stuff they're sharing around the world on Newsfeed today. Benjamin Netanyahu keeps going with plans that, if he wins re-election, could result in the end of a viable Palestinian state. More than 1,000 languages are spoken in India, but the government wants there to be only one. The fight game in Nigeria that's hoping to go global. And fat-shaming a chipmunk in today's Animals Doing Stuff. And at the top of our newsfeed, Israeli apartheid, powerful language being used to describe the government of Benjamin Netanyahu. The suggestion being that if the Prime Minister wins tomorrow's elections, Palestinians will lose the few rights they have and any hope of a two-state solution will be lost forever. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is relying on Donald Trump's so-called deal of the century to enable him to make an independent Palestinian state a pipe dream. While campaigning, Netanyahu has made it clear he will go further than ever before in annexing land and limiting the possibility of Palestinian statehood. He said this when asked about the areas Kiryat Arba and Hebron.
They will be part of Israel, but I need a mandate to execute this plan.
This, as well as the annexation of huge areas of the West Bank, will be done with the blessing of his American counterpart. Netanyahu's announcements have been widely condemned all across social media. Many wonder what the region would look like in the future. Naftali Bennett is a Jewish ultra-nationalist politician. He tweeted out how his Yamina party envisages a future under the Trump-sanctioned peace plan. The future Palestinian state is in black. Those white dots are Israeli settlements. The map's been criticized for its inaccuracy, but Netanyahu has his own version, which he showcased last week. It too was called out for its inaccuracies. The organization Peace Now describes the plan like this.
The vision presented by the Prime Minister is in fact a vision of apartheid, of one country in which one group of civilians has full rights and another does not. The autonomy and access roads Netanyahu guarantees to the Palestinians in the valley are alarmingly similar to the Bantustan formula in former apartheid South Africa.
A sentiment echoed by Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu.
Israel, encouraged by the support of the certain countries, is continuing its aggressive policies that are turning it into a racist apartheid regime.
The region's future is tethered to its past. This is how the United Nations planned to divide the nation in 1947. And this is how it's divided today. Palestinians live under occupation on ever-diminishing land, spaces where Israeli settlements increase in violation of international and, in some cases, Israeli law. And Netanyahu is betting his re-election on expanding these plans. Okay, let's take a look at some of the other things that caught our eye on social media. Now, BTS is back has been the top trend on Twitter all day, and as the hashtag suggests, it's about BTS and the fact they're back. Now, some didn't even realize they were gone, Louis, but a month's break was enough for the biggest band in the world, who announced last month they'd take some time off. The boys reportedly jumped on a plane out of South Korea earlier today, destination unknown, but they have a show coming up in Saudi Arabia on November the 11th. And you know how it is, you wait and wait and wait for a bus, then suddenly two come along at once. Well, in Moscow, at the weekend, all those buses and snowplows and garbage trucks came in perfectly ordered lines as part of a parade of city service vehicles. Amazing, way better than parades of city-destroying missiles, we think. And the NBA champions, the Toronto Raptors, have allowed Nike to add their logo to a sports hijab. They announced the news with the release of this video featuring an all-female basketball team from Toronto called the Hijabi Ballers. The Toronto Raptors Nike Pro hijab is available for $40 Canadian, about 30 US. in one store in Toronto. Well, next, the Prime Minister of Britain made a ridiculous comparison at the weekend, and it was about the Marvel superhero, the Incredible Hulk, and Brexit. Johnson told the Daily Mail that the UK was going to break free of the EU like the Hulk, and that the madder the Hulk gets, the stronger the Hulk gets. It's an incredible and inaccurate thing for him to suggest. And it was noticed by the actor Mark Ruffalo, who portrayed the Hulk in recent movies. He says Bojo seems to forget that the Hulk fights for good and the whole. Mad and strong can also be dense and destructive. The Hulk works best when he's part of a team and is a bit of a disaster when he's alone. Plus, he's always got Dr. Banner's science and reason. Well, this is the world we are in now, where comic book characters are being championed incorrectly by prime ministers and actors are issuing clarifications to prime ministers on Twitter. Well, Twitter was all over it, as you'd imagine. Rush Jackson putting these two images side by side with the words, a grotesque cartoon character with anger management issues and the Incredible Hulk. And this one showing the time the PM ran over a kid during a touch rugby game with the words, Boris Smash. Now, a plan to make Hindi the lingua franca of India has been met with anger by some. There are as many as 1,500 different languages spoken by the more than 1 billion people who live there. Here's Radhika.
India's Home Minister has pitched a common language for the country, and he says since Hindi is spoken the most, it should be the language that unifies India. His comments have been getting polarized reactions, with many netizens asking that in a country where 19,500 dialects are spoken, can one language really fit all? Let me take you through some of the Twitter commentary. For example, this user says, the beauty of India is its diversity and numerous languages. The union government shelling out loads of money to promote only Hindi is decimating the very idea of India. We aren't second-class citizens of the Indian Union. Let me also tell you about a very popular picture that's been going around. There's a textbook here and the title says, Learn Hindi in 30 days or else. Now, of course, there have been a lot of negative reactions to the Home Minister's proposition, but there are some who support him as well. For example, this Twitter user who says, we accept English as a unifying language, though it's not Indian, but we will not accept Hindi because that's divisive. No one is taking away your mother tongue and we respect all, but Hindi, being highest percentage of spoken language, should be developed as Indian unifying language. There's also been a lot of political backlash after this statement came in, so clearly the last word on this topic has not been spoken yet.
All right, we will keep spinning around the world now for some other stories you need to know this Monday. Denmark's public broadcaster TV2 hosted a telethon, a rolling live broadcast with the aim of raising money for a good cause, and the good cause was the planting of trees. They raised $2.6 million, and the money will go to organisations who are replanting and protecting Danish forests. It's the first time a telethon has been used for such a cause. Edward Snowden, who leaked documents about the way the US National Security Agency spies on people's phones and computer communications and then fled to Russia to escape prosecution, is asking France for asylum. He's asked before, back in 2013, and was rejected then. He's still wanted in the US on several criminal charges and has been hiding out in Moscow. And people in France, on a totally unrelated subject, are proposing these. They're marketed as flying taxis by a company called Sea Bubbles. The vehicle is imaginatively called the Bubble and is electric. It could be making an appearance as soon as next year if the guys who make it get their way. The Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling is going to give $18 million to fund research into multiple sclerosis at a hospital in Edinburgh. The money will go to the Anne Rowling Regenerative Neurology Clinic, named after her mother. It opened in 2010. The author's mother died from complications related to MS at the age of 45. Now, Beyoncé didn't win a Creative Emmy Award for her documentary about her show at Coachella, and some people on the internet were not happy about it. While the doco was widely praised and her performance described as phenomenal, that didn't seem to be enough to make the Emmy creative judges vote for her. Queen Bee lost to Bruce Springsteen's doc for directing, RuPaul's Drag Race for costumes, and James Corden's Carpool Karaoke, which shows just how wrong those judges were. Now, the protests in Hong Kong have reached a significant milestone, and the demonstrators have shown no signs of slowing down. Here's Caroline.
It's been 100 days of unrest here in Hong Kong, and while some people might have been hoping there'd be an end to the unrest at this point, we've actually just had one of the most violent weekends of the whole movement. So where are we now, and where is this thing possibly going to end? Well, look, Monday here in Hong Kong, Monday morning started relatively normally. There have been huge cleanups across the city, which is remarkable considering the amount of violence we've seen over the weekend. But we're certainly not seeing an end to that violence. And people were thinking by now, by this point, students would be distracted with their schoolwork and be back at school. However, we've actually been seeing demos outside schools instead. We've been seeing students from high school and students from university using those campuses as part of their demonstrations. And it's become increasingly unpredictable and quite difficult, I think, for the police to understand where the next protest movement is going to come from. And part of the reason for that is people are able to use something called Telegram, which is a messaging service, which is pretty secure, and it's actually quite hard for security forces to break in. And that's why the students and the other protesters have been using it, because they know that it's a place that they can have relative privacy and not be found out when they're discussing organising protests. Meanwhile, the Hong Kong government has tried to ease the protest to an extent. There were 5 demands originally, of course that first one being the extradition bill that people weren't happy with. The big one now is that protesters want an investigation into the police treatment of protesters. Some people saying there's been an excessive use of force. That hasn't happened yet, so people are still demanding that as one of their 5 demands. Meanwhile, the Chinese government, according to sources that have spoken to Reuters, have said that they want their state companies to help buoy the economy in Hong Kong in key sectors. And those key sectors include the property market, which is notoriously expensive here in Hong Kong and quite unaffordable for most people, actually, and the tourism sector, which has really suffered as a result of these 100 days of unrest.
And next, a traditional Nigerian sport is trying to widen its reach and appeal, and social media is one way to get people to take notice. This is Nambe.
The overall goal for us as a company is basically to elevate this sport from this rustic grounds into an internationally recognized sport. You understand? Put it out there on the likes of the UFC and the MMA, for Europe and USA, similar to what they have in Asia, the One Championship. So for us, it's about building this Dambe Warriors franchise as a sporting asset in Africa. It's like the biggest combat sport in Africa.
And last up, we'll have an animal doing stuff for you today. And this one is a definite fave. Meet Chunk, the groundhog. Now, this guy has been stealing salad from the garden of the humans who created this channel on YouTube. They say they noticed their food was being snatched and set up a camera to see what was going on. And this is what they found. Chunk munching away, living his best life. And that's all from the Newsfeed team. Reach out to me with your questions, comments, complaints and suggestions. You'll find me at Kamali Melbourne. You'll find us 24/7 on YouTube. You can subscribe to our channel and you can follow me on Twitter. Follow, subscribe and add, and I will see you again tomorrow.